Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with a Journalist, brought to you by OnePitch. The guests on our show include some of the most notable journalists from the top US-based publications who cover topics including technology, lifestyle and culture, health, science, consumer products, business news, and beauty and wellness. We discuss their role, the types of stories they cover, what their inbox looks like, and how they connect with sources. Head to onepitch.co and look for the video page to learn more about our new video series featuring journalists from the show. Today's guest on Coffee with a Journalist is Jeena Sharma, a retail reporter at Morning Brew. Jeena covers retail and consumer trends from the B2B perspective for the Retail Brew newsletter. She was previously the beauty editor at Paper Magazine and a fashion and beauty writer at Nylon. During the episode, Jeena shares about reader feedback, her honest advice for sending her pitches, how she seeks inspiration for her stories, and more. Let's hear from Jeena now.
Welcome, everyone. This is Coffee with a Journalist. I'm Beck Bamberger. We are here to discover how journalists can be our friends as publicists. And that's why we do this podcast. I made OnePitch to help obviously publicists get to better connections with journalists. That's kind of the theme of this. But this show in particular brings on actual real deal journalists to chat about what they don't like, what they do like, all the things about their inbox, where the future of journalism is going, and all the above and more, usually a lot more. Today with us, super exciting, we have reporter at Retail Morning Brew, Jeena Sharma here. We have a lot to talk about, Jeena, because Retail Brew, well, specifically Morning Brew, but then the retail portion of it is quite large as well. So why don't we first start with what Morning Brew all encompasses for those maybe not as familiar?
Yeah. So Morning Brew is a business publication. We have two arms, the B2C arm and then the B2B arm. B2C is mainly business news, business features for consumers, very consumer focused. And B2B, which is where I work, we have several newsletters. We have Retail Brew, Marketing Brew, MTech Brew, HR Brew. Each one of them focuses on different industries. Retail Brew is obviously retail. So we cater to brands, retailers, marketing professionals, salespeople interested in building a brand.
And for you, Jeena, because you used to be at Nylon, you used to be at Paper, you were a freelancer. Is it a little different now for you because you touch more on this B2B focus, or are you still getting to have the fun that you'd maybe have in your Nylon days?
It is quite different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I won't lie, because both at Nylon and Paper, they tend to be more entertainment focused, more culture reporting, which was fun. But I think I got to a point where I sort of didn't want to do, I feel like a lot of like beauty, fashion, entertainment journalism is very e-commerce focused. And I didn't want to like do listicles about these are the 5 lipsticks you should buy or
for fall. Yeah.
I was more interested in doing like investigative, bigger features, that sort of journalism, which is what I'm doing right now. And interested in consumer behavior and helping brands figure shit out.
Yes. So, it's needed. It's needed in this ever-evolving world.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeena, your inbox, is it crazy in there? How is it?
Crazy is, I mean, it's an understatement. Yeah. I can't take 2 days off without coming to 100 emails.
All pitches in those 100 emails?
All pitches or follow-ups or sometimes complaints from readers or like, well, maybe you should have written about this or written this and that.
You know what? I have not heard on here of all the shows we've done, people saying, oh, I get emails that are also complaints. Huh.
I mean, they're more like suggestions. They're like, why did you add, this brand that I love?
Oh, now, and from actual, like just readers, not publicists saying, why didn't you include my client, but just a normal reader?
Yes.
Really?
Which can be kind of annoying. Like the other day, I got an email from this reader who read this piece we did on cannabis. And he was like, well, I think that this source was incorrect because I have a vertical farm somewhere here, or I have worked in the cannabis industry and this is what you should say instead, or this cannabis brand should be saying this instead. And I'm like, I can't force them.
Yes.
That's not true. I'm sorry you disagree with me. But
so does that warrant a response from you?
Usually, no, unless it's something that's factually incorrect, which hasn't happened yet. So it's mostly people reacting, because they don't agree with a certain brand standpoint or a certain source's insight. So I'm just usually like, okay, delete.
So no acknowledgement. No need to add fuel to the fire on that. Okay. Now, what about pitches? So you get tons of pitches. Jeena, you cover quite the spectrum because it's those deeper dive pieces, but it's funding startups for beauty and retail pieces. You had something on Beyond Meat. You're talking about DSW, so legacy brands. It's wide. Do you respond to every pitch? Do you mass delete? What do you do?
I try to respond to pitches, I think, that seem like it's coming from a person either that I've worked with before, or it's a pitch where it feels like, the PR person who's pitching to me has actually read the work that we do, because sometimes they can be so off base. So usually I respond to that. Like the other day, I got a pitch from someone who was like, this ex-detective who now investigates fake reviewers on Amazon. And I was like, what do you think I write about? Because that's not what we cover.
Yeah, I'm going to be generous with maybe the person of like, oh, it is a very long stretch, but I could see where they're maybe going if you were going to maybe do in that. It's a long stretch.
Yeah. So
okay.
Those are the pitch tend to not respond.
Okay. You just not respond. Okay. Do you do any filing of them? Do you ever come back 8 months later to something?
That has happened.
Okay.
Usually it's embarrassing. It's when I miss something and I'm like, oh, this would have been a great story, but I'm a human being. So sometimes I miss great pitches and then I come back and then I'm like, I'm so sorry for my extremely late response 8 months later.
But I still want to write a piece?
Yes.
Hey.
And PRs are, they're okay. They're good about it. So
that's good. That's good. Okay. So for subject lines, is that important for you to see a gripping subject line? Do you look at the subject line as the indicator for you're going to open the email?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the best subject lines are really, as I've said, they're very to the point. So the other day I got a pitch from this beauty brand that was raising money and they were like, embargo, this beauty brand is raising $250 million. And, subject line. And I'm interested. So I opened the email. So yeah, sometimes the subject lines are just 2 sentences and I'm not going to open that because
no. Okay.
Figure your shit out. So
today's interview will continue after this brief message brought to you by OnePitch. Are you curious to see the unique ways OnePitch helps PR professionals and marketers pitch journalists? Head to onepitch.co to learn about our new OnePitch score and see how easy it is to find the right journalist to pitch your news to. Sign up for your free account today. Now, back to today's episode.
Yeah. You know what? I haven't asked this before, but I will ask you because you're giving me the inspiration. If there's one thing you could tell publicists for their pitching, what would it be?
Just don't try to bury the lead.
Yep.
And don't try to trick me,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if I want to write the story, if I think it's interesting, I'm going to write it. If I don't think it's interesting, I'm not going to write it. And you trying to pitch it as something entirely else, which happens a lot, is not going to help. So.
Good. Let's all be listening, everybody. I like the pearls of wisdom coming here. Jeena, when you do your stories, you mentioned your cannabis piece. That was a recent one late. Obviously, it was on 420. I noticed that. You had one on the Precise skincare startup getting money. You had Meta. Some of that's something with Facebook coming in with its real life story. Do you have a way in which you get yourself inspired to do a story? Do you do like walks or your shower or your coffee time that things and stories pop up to you? Or is it more reactive and you're going off of pitches, let's say?
I try not to be reactive because I feel like that's a lot of people that are already doing that. I tend to usually look at what's going on, around me when I'm going down the street and I see Bloomingdale's with a great display or some store, where I go in and they have like an interactive thing going on and I want to know more about it. Sometimes it's based off of pitches that I get in my email. Sometimes it's a story I read from another journalist and I start thinking about a different angle or even new stories. So I'd say across the board.
Okay. And how good or how nice you're in New York. You were like walking through the retail runways and seeing those displays and seeing it kind of live unfold for some
Yeah.
inspiration, perhaps.
Yeah. I'm lucky, I would say, in that
Ah,
respect.
yeah. So you just do a little stroll around Soho and you're like, oh, got to write about this now.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
I walk around, so I'm like, here's 10 ideas.
Exactly. It just pours on the street because the retail windows are sometimes nice.
Not all of them great, though.
Yes, the ideas not always are of that caliber. Gina, what do you do consumption wise, story wise, that is not, let's say, your beat? Do you watch Netflix? Do you read the Wall Street Journal? Are you listening to podcasts on murder mysteries that we need to know about? We just like to know, where do you also get stories?
I think I do all of that. I mean, I think it's kind of restricting in some ways and limiting if you only stick to reading about your beat or doing things that have to do
I
with
agree.
your beat. I don't think that's how you get the best ideas. So I read about things that are way off from what I write about. I read a lot about social justice issues. I read a lot about women's rights. I read a lot of books about those subjects. I watch a lot of HBO, Netflix.
Do you have any favorite show, series, anything? We like to get actual titles. Shout out to journalists who also write books. Sometimes there's like a journalist will be on here and then like, oh, I like this book and it was written by a journal, and then it's like, more journalists doing more stories. I love it.
My favorite TV show, I would say, is Twin Peaks, but that has nothing to do with it.
Oh, that doesn't have anything, but that's fine. And it's been kind of on my list. Okay, what do you like about it, by the way?
Everything. I'm like a huge David Lynch fan. I love the mood. I love the acting. I love the characters.
And it's from the 90s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's something I really only got into 5 years ago. I would say it's not for everyone because it's
okay.
boring at some points.
Yes. A crime drama mixed with healthy doses of the surreal. This series. Ooh, okay. I'm in. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, you should try
An
it.
oldie but goodie. Okay, great. I love it. Okay, that's good. Anything that's like a little bit of an old thing. For example, since you are in New York, I will say it is a treat, capital T, to watch Sex and the City, the original, with all the New York stuff.
I recently watched it for the first time.
Oh, what did you think?
I used to be someone who always used to make fun of people who loved it, but
yeah, me too.
Yes. So,
but then I'm like, well, let me look. And, it's hard to not get into it.
I know. I mean, I used to be like, oh, I hate Carrie. She's so annoying. But, it's a great show. And now I'm among those annoying people who always talk about it. So.
Oh, I do love it. Well, Jeena, is there a position you have with exclusives versus embargoes? Do you like exclusives?
I love exclusives.
Okay.
And I love when PRs are, upfront about it from the beginning. This can be
okay. This is an exclusive. And just to be clear, what is an exclusive defined to you?
Like a news about certain thing that a brand is doing, whether it's, a funding news or it's a new feature that they're adding to their portfolio, a new brand that they're adding to their portfolio. All of that is great exclusives.
Okay. Do you, though, feel an exclusive is you're the only one with the news forever? Or, some publicists think like, oh, it's exclusive, but 2 hours after your story goes live, I'm just going to pitch everything under the moon under it. Or are you one of those reporters? You're like, I don't care. Once my piece is out, I don't care what you do with it.
I think,
or try to pitch. You're more on that front. Okay.
The latter. Yeah.
Okay.
As long as first. It's an
piece out. Great.
Yeah.
Great. I always found it kind of weird. Some people really, they do not want to know or believe that then that piece could get further circulate amongst pitches. And I'm always thinking like, but you were first. It's already out. You're good, right?
It's so unfair to ask that of someone, I feel like, to be like, you're going to be the only person to report it. Why?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe in that.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. We got that cleared up. Mm-hmm. Okay. Lastly, Jeena, what do you think the future of journalism looks like?
My ideal future of journalism?
Yes, your ideal.
I think we're moving, or at least this is what I've seen, we're moving away from the whole breaking news culture, which is great, because that's the type of journalism I don't want to do. And moving towards really investigative, deeply researched, stories. And eventually that's what's going to help your publication to stand out, because there's too many people who can report the news first now because of social media.
Yeah.
And I think social media ultimately will become the primary medium. It already is to get news. So, to be a great publication, that's not really adding.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, that hasn't been mentioned here much at all. It's just that since social media can provide that venue and you're getting your news source that way, then wherein lies great journalism? And it's much more on the in-depth or the distinct or the nuanced and whatnot. That is a whole other level and a whole different type of existence as a reporter, because you're not, oh my God, trying to get it out the second it hits or anything. It's much longer, but do expand.
Yeah. And I feel like it defeats the purpose of journalism. I don't think most journalists I know get into journalism hoping that they become breaking news reporters, because there's not that intrigue in it. And you can't be seriously passionate about that, And I think it has its place. Obviously, news does. So, social media is not a great place to verify things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of faults, and a lot of it comes from unreliable sources.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't believe in the chase, that news publications are in against each other, that we have to be the first one to report it. I don't think it's eventually going to get you too far as a new publication.
Yeah, interesting thought for those news outlets out there. What are they going to do? I have to say, too, when I was doing my NBC days, local news, just to emphasize, and you're writing about stuff that just locally just broke, something. Yeah, it wasn't for me in terms of getting fired up. I get, though, the rush. I get the feel of oh, yes, we're the first, my things. And that's just not for me. Frankly,
and nobody even remembers eventually. They just remember
that's
the news.
The other thing too. Yeah.
So
yeah, you're on a wheel. It never stops.
Yeah. So what's the point? Because it stresses you out.
Yes, exactly. It does. It sure does. Oh gosh. Well, Jeena, I hope your job is far less stressful than that, being in live news. And I just want to thank you for being on today and dazzling us with your retail creativity and all the great stuff you're doing.
Of course. And thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Excellent. Jeena, thank you. Everybody, do not pitch her on Instagram. Do not pitch her on Twitter. We heard that. See the little videos that we did. Maybe you'll see her on the streets in Soho, though. There you go.
Pitch me an idea there.
Pitch you an idea there on the street. Love it. Thank you, Jeena Sharma, reporter at Morning Brew Retail. Love it. Thanks, Jeena.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Coffee with the Journalist featuring Jeena Sharma from Morning Brew. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you have a moment, please leave us a review to share your thoughts about the show and today's guest. To learn more about the latest tools on OnePitch and to subscribe to our weekly podcast newsletter, head to our website at onepitch.co. We'll see you all next week with a brand new guest and even more insights about the journalists you want to learn more about. Until then, start great stories.